to Outdoor Addictions. Hope everybody's doing well. 4th of July is come and gone.
I think we missed you first a little bit. I was on the wrong button. All right, let's start that over again.
Welcome to Outdoor Addictions. Hope everybody's doing well. 4th of July has come and gone. You know what that means, right, Keith?
Yeah, home of Black Panther.
No, that's not what it means.
Oh, okay. There's something coming up. There's some event on the horizon. What is that?
Hunting season.
Yeah.
That's it, hunting season. I was talking to Keith a week or so ago. We were talking about, for me, it's like 4th of July is a switch. Once that switch is turned, once you get past it, July 5th, I'm thinking about hunting season. Every year.
And a lot of people are that way.
That's right. Thinking about it. Summer's gone now. Let's go. Let's move on.
Still hot, Bruce. It's still hot.
The hottest part's not even here yet, is it? Still, and that's hard to believe. It's hard to believe. Every year we say that. It ain't gotten hot yet, but it's coming, man. About August. If you're not familiar with Southwest Mississippi or Mississippi in general, right?
Yeah.
About August, early September, it's hot.
Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, Alabama. I think we're all
in the same boat.
We're just all sitting here along that Gulf Coast, sucking that moisture right out of the Gulf of Mexico, and when you step outside, it feels like you're swimming.
I'm telling you, I just got back from Montana. My family and I went to Yellowstone to celebrate the 4th. Man, it's so nice up there. Low humidity, highs in the 70s. It was downright chilly.
I wish you brought some of that back with you.
Oh man, I couldn't believe it was that different, but it was, and it's a different world. We went out to eat supper. See, it was a couple nights ago, and it was lows in the 30s, and people wearing jackets and dressed like wintertime up there, man. Here it is, July. And I said, back home, by golly, you wouldn't find a jacket anywhere. Except in a closet is where you'd find it.
If you see somebody with a jacket on, you worried, or they got a gun under there?
And they up to no good. If they're wearing a sweatshirt with a hoodie, the hood pulled up, when it's 90 degrees, ooh, they got something to hide, I'm telling you. Well, all right. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope you had a good holiday. And Keith, what'd y'all do this holiday season?
Absolutely nothing.
That sounds good.
We had the week before the 4th at the beach with our kids, and pretty much did our celebrating during that week. Probably got enough of each other during that week.
Well, that's like us. I think all my kids, I have 4 girls, and between my 4 girls and my wife, I think toward the end we were all glad to have some me time, you know. So everybody, my wife went to work and I went to work today, and my kids are just doing their own thing right now. So
4th of July, Linda and I we stayed at the house. We did go visit my mother for a little while at the assisted living, and talked to her, got her television straight, did some things she wanted me to take care of for her, and we came back. I cooked some ribs on the grill, and we basically just watched television.
Yep, sounds good. Sounds good. Well, I'm telling you, Keith, when I was in Montana, we had an adventure, man. It was like, if you've listened to this, you've ever been to Yellowstone, this was our first time to ever go. And I always heard about it my whole life, always wanted to go there. And did not realize how much driving was going to be involved with driving through Yellowstone. You pretty much live in your car when you drive through there. But I'm telling you, it's some of the most beautiful views and wildlife. It's pretty amazing. And we had some good times, but I'm telling you, man, between lightning and rain and the river and getting out there and rafting in that cold water, it was a workout. I tell you that. We were all sore and cold before it was over with, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. It was good. It was not a relaxing vacation, though. I'll say that.
That's my bucket list, is to Yellowstone and that area of the country. I'd love to get up there and just.
It's pretty. If you haven't been, I recommend you go. At some point, go. But don't wait till you get too old to go. Now you won't be able to get out
Maybe
there.
I'm already too old.
Nah, I'm kidding. No, we saw lots of wildlife. I think we ended up seeing, I think we counted 17 bears that we saw. These are bears with those sows or cubs or occasional black bear. We saw one grizzly for sure. It was a pretty
These
good-sized
bears that
grizzly.
you saw, or did all of you see them?
No, it wasn't just me. Matter of fact, my kids saw some that I didn't.
Ah,
So
okay.
yeah, so for once it wasn't me that saw the most. They were telling me. I think I actually out of the 17, I maybe have saw 12 or something like that. There were some that I didn't catch. But you know how you stop and you say, yes, see that big dead tree out there about 400 yards? Yeah, he's to the left of that big dead tree. Well, there's 20 big dead trees out there at 400 yards, and there's some at 300 and some at 500, right? So they were like, I don't see the bear. There ain't no bear out there. Well, sure enough, there'd be one, but it'd be like a little ant, on a hill 400 yards away. But anyway, they'd see it and I wouldn't, or vice versa. I'd see it. You know how it is.
I think your eyes are probably a little better than yours.
Yeah,
Bruce.
probably so. Probably so. But I tell you what, it was fun, man. It's a different world out there. Different world. A lot of fun. I love some Montana. I'll tell you that. If I could retire and move there, I'd enjoy it. I think until it got cold. Wintertime, I'd probably come south a bit.
Maybe get you a job at Yellowstone Ranch.
Yellowstone Ranch? Oh, you mean? I don't know. I don't want to end up at a train station down there. That's what I'm afraid I'd end up. Come on, Bruce, let's go down here to the train station. No, I don't want to do that. I think I'll stay home.
I'll take my truck, thank you.
All right, we're going to talk a little bit today about hunting season, right?
Hunting.
Yeah, we're going to talk a lot about that in the coming episodes, I'm sure. But now we're going to talk a little bit about the benefits of being a member of a hunting club, or maybe starting your own hunting club. When we say hunting club, we kind of use that term loosely, right? I mean, Keith has a lot of experience with hunting clubs. And so he's going to talk a little bit about that today. You're going to talk about that. Specifically what it means to start a hunting club, how to do that, what to look for, and kind of what the definition of it is, right? We'll discuss that in just a minute. But also, it doesn't have to be complicated. That's the main thing. It could be just as simple as you and a group of other families getting together and buying a piece of ground, piece of private land, and starting your own private hunting club, if you will. And that's the going trend these days. A lot of people are pooling their funds together. You can buy a bigger tract of land that's more secluded. You got a little more control over it. And if you get 2 or 3 good people involved, 2 or 3 good families, you can actually have a good setup, right? And it's becoming more and more common these days in terms of real estate. But you can also lease 16 section land, but you can also lease private land. So we're going to talk a little bit today about how to do that, how to find those places, how to structure it. We're not experts by any means, but Keith has some experience in that. So Keith, I'm just going to turn it over to you, man, let you start it out.
Well, I spent years, probably the first leasing experience I had. Well, let me back up. We talked about that property in Monticello, out there where Cypress Point is.
Right.
I had a deal with a gentleman that owned that. He owned like 600 acres there, right in the bend of Pearl River. And I hunted with him for about 5 years and had a good relationship with him. But then he passed away and things got, went south on that. Well, you got to begin to start. If you want to hunt, you got to find a place to hunt.
Yeah.
And the fellow I worked with came to me and he said, look, we've got 80 acres in at least the northwest corner of Copiah County. It's pretty close to where Copiah and Lincoln and Lawrence all come together at.
Right.
A little creek runs through it, and he said, we're looking. It's $800 to lease it. We're looking for 8 people to lease it, $100 a piece.
That's not bad at all.
I jumped all over that.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Of course, now there's no electricity. It's just 80 acres on a gravel road.
Just vacant land.
Just vacant land. And we went out there, and I probably hunted this place for 3 years, and I think maybe twice I saw somebody else hunting out there, and it was usually the guy that had taught me, that told me about it. I never saw anybody else out there hunting. And it was a good little place. I killed some deer on it. My cousin and I would go out there and hunt. We really had no rules. Everybody had paid the money, go out there to hunt. He took a chance of going out there for the bin. But I couldn't tell you the guy's name, other people's names that were on the lease.
Right.
To this day. But we had that. It's just a piece of land. Everybody agrees you're gonna hunt it.
Right.
Now, if we had all been hunting out there on 80 acres, it would have gotten crowded.
Yeah.
But we weren't, and I usually used climbing stands back in those days. A lot of folks, that's when climbing stands really began to get popular.
Right.
And we hunted that and had a good time with it. And then in the process of doing that, about the last year I was out there, I met Dick Kilpatrick, who's the man who started the hunting club I'm in now.
Yeah.
And Linda and his wife worked together, and we went to a company function. It was a picnic up at Neshoba County Fairgrounds, and I rode up there with him. Well, the whole way up there and the whole way back. And during the day, we had time, we were talking,
Sure.
hunting, fishing, whatever. And when it was all said and done, he said, well, I'm having fish fried at my camp there on Old Highway 51. So you won't come out there? I said, sure. He said, he brought me out. He rode me all over the place, showed me the stands he'd put up. He said, I'm looking for a couple more members. He said, I'd like for you to join me. He said, I think we can get along.
Yeah.
And the rest is history.
So how many years have you been a member of that club?
Oh, gosh, probably about 30 years.
Wow.
It has been a long time. That was in the early 90s.
Yeah.
When I first met him and we started getting together.
And at some point,
89 or 90.
Okay. And at some point, you actually became the guy over the club.
Right. Dick
became the head of the club.
passed away in 2002. And Dick was one of these people that if he liked you, he liked you.
Yeah.
He didn't, but he was if he didn't like what you were doing, he's gonna tell you to get out quick.
Right.
And I've seen him do that time and again on the place.
Right.
Well, his son-in-law came in, and that's where I first met Clark Mooney at. And we hunted together, and then after Dick passed away, we just moved the president over to Clark. Well, 3 years later, Clark passed away, same year as Katrina. And
So that was 2005.
that was 2005, and Cliff and I talked about it, and I said, what are we gonna do? And I said, you gonna be president? He said, no, you are. I said, me? He said, yeah. He said, Clark and I have talked about this, about what if something happened to him or what we'd do, and we decided, you be president, and I'd be vice president. He said, I could be the one to tick everybody off if necessary. You be the good guy, and I'll be the one to do the good cop, bad cop thing. Now, you've got to have some leadership in the thing.
That's right.
You got to have a president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, but some of us wore several hats in that dealings there.
Yeah.
But one of the important things of having a hunting camp, is first is the land.
Right.
I mean, you got to have a lease somewhere to get that in place to hang your hat. And we had 4 acres there inside the property that we had our campsite set up at. And I know we're talking about assigning presidency to somebody, but I actually read this in a book now about hunting camps, that it is not a democracy. Everybody thinks when you got a president, a vice president, and all your treasurer and everything, that it's going to be a democracy. this book actually stated it's got to be a benevolent dictatorship. And it went on to explain that you've got to have somebody in there that will listen to what people suggest, but be able to decide if that's going to be the best for the whole camp, for everybody in the camp and the land as a whole, about what you're going to do.
That's why it's important to have somebody in that position who is good at seeing the big picture and not reacting to something that may have gone south or whatever, or gotten sideways. And you do what's best for everyone involved. And so basically what the president does, from what I understand, is kind of enforce the rules, right?
Enforce the rules, and
we're going to talk about the importance of knowing what those rules are from day one.
Right,
And
right.
so if you're listening today and you want to start something like this, like Keith and his friends did years ago, it's perfectly fine to start, but one of the things you have to do is you have to have rules.
you got to have ground rules. If you don't,
Some type of rules.
it's going.
It has to be written down, right? Recorded.
That's right, recorded. I mean, we had them. They had several versions of them over the years. Made some
And they can be
modifications
changed,
to them.
adapted, yeah.
But one of our biggest rules, and I've seen people get run off quicker for it, was no shooting from the ground.
Right.
You just aim a rifle straight out across a piece of property. You don't know where that bullet's going to wind up.
And the reason for that is because you have several people that's on the property, potentially, and it's just not safe. It reaches the point where it's a safety hazard. And I can understand that.
I saw when Clark was still president, he had a friend of his, or a co-worker that he had brought up that said something about wanting to be a member, and he came up one year. And you know, hunted with us for about 2 years. Had a bad attitude. One of those people that won't try to run things. Thought he knew the right way to do everything.
Right.
And one of the rules we enforced, you know, we told him everything about it. No shooting from the ground. We've got stands. You're shooting from an elevated position. If you miss what you're shooting at, well, it's going to go on the ground.
Sure.
Well, late in the morning, Clark was in the kitchen one day, and he heard a shot. A few minutes later, this guy comes driving in on his four-wheeler, and he looked at him. He said, "Did you get a deer?" He said, "No." He said, "Why not? I heard you shoot. Did you miss it?" He said, "No, I was shooting that old mangy dog that run across me out there." He said, "Were you on the ground when you shot?" He said, "Technically, no."
He was in the truck, I bet.
He was on his four-wheeler.
I was on the four-wheeler, yeah.
He said, "What do you mean, technically, no?" He said, "Well, I was on my four-wheeler. I wasn't on the ground." Clark just turned and faced him head on, said, "Tell you what, bud, you go out there and you pack your crap up, you load it, and you get out of here."
Yeah.
He said, "What if my son had been driving a four-wheeler coming out across there by the time you pull that trigger?"
Yeah. Well, those are all things you have to discuss as a group, and you know the time to do all that is when you first start.
Right.
Well, now we're talking about rules for a hunting club, but the truth is this can apply to just you and a group of buddies.
A basic group of friends need to know what
land. Yeah. You just get together and you talk about it. And where it gets confusing is when, you know, in our neck of the woods, the best time to be in the woods hunting is during the rut, but that usually falls around the holidays here. Well, you have a lot of family in town, usually. So it's not uncommon, you know, for you want to go out and hunt the rut, say in late December, that's around Christmas, well, you may have a brother-in-law or a brother or sister or grandchild or whoever in town, and they want to go hunt too. And they don't have the experience that you may have, especially hunting in that particular area. And so you can see how it can become a problem. So that's why there has to be some types of ground rules set, and that has to be explained not only to the members but to their guests, to their family who shows up during the best time of the year. Now all of a sudden you've got a lot more. You've got 3 times people on a piece of ground than you would have back in October and November, you know. So it can get out of hand pretty quickly. The same is true during turkey season. It's no different, you know. You just got to be careful about that too. So anyway, it's just important to think ahead and set some type of rules before you start an official hunting camp. And look, there are people listening today that have a lot more experience than I would. And Keith, you have a lot of experience because you've been doing it for so long. But let's talk a minute about, you know, the first step, really, if you're thinking about doing this, and you mentioned this earlier, is you got to find a piece of land. You got to start there. All right, so what are some of your options? If you're listening, if someone's listening today and they're like, I don't even know where to start, well, give us some tips about that.
Well, first thing, if you can afford and got the money, or got a group, you and a group of friends can put your heads together and come up with the amount of money and amount of land you like, you can purchase the land.
That's an easy look.
Find you a local realtor and
that's right.
somebody that you can work with. Tell them what you want, and they will work with you and find you a property.
And so, if you're not familiar with the trend that Keith's talking about, it's very common these days for buyers to buy a piece of private ground. They pool their funds together, and maybe they don't want a cabin on it. Maybe they just want land. That's all they want, is because they're going to drive from their house out there to hunt. They're not interested in staying there. They're interested in just going in, hunting, turn around, and going out, and going back home. Well, that's a simple process. You can actually buy the property, pool your funds together. Say you get 2 or 3, maybe 4 people together. Well, if you do that, you can afford to buy a pretty good piece of ground, right? In a good area. So you have to find what you're looking for. So if you're wanting to go that route, contact a realtor or just start looking on your own and see what you can find. And the reason why I say that's important, because, you know, what are your goals? Are your goals to kill trophy animals? Do you want to kill the best possible deer you can? Well, then you need to look in the area of your state where it offers that, right? Each state has different areas that offer better, some offer better hunting more than others. Same is true here for Mississippi. It's no different. You go further west toward the Mississippi River, you generally have better hunting as far as quality deer. The further east, it may not be as good. That's not to say you still won't have good hunting. You could have really good hunting over there. But you need to think about where you want it to be. And also, you need to think about how far of a drive do you want it to be from your house. You know, not just you, but from the other members. That's important. You have to find out from them. How far are they willing to drive? Some people like to be within 15 or 30 minutes. Other people don't mind driving an hour or 2. That's up to the individual, right?
Well, that's one of the things I love about our camp. It's, you know, I'm not but about maybe 8 miles from the camp.
That's very convenient.
I could stay out there if I want to, you know, and there have been times, didn't really have any need to. I could be at home in 10, 15 minutes.
Sure.
But sometimes if there's a group of guys out there, some of the ones, you know, we've been hunting together and we just enjoy being together. We might have the old fire and a beer or 2 might be drank around it in the evening.
Cook a good meal.
Just cook a good meal and just get together and enjoy being out there.
Right.
But for other people, they like to have it a little farther away. Some people, it's their therapy, it's their getaway time.
That's right.
to get off and do that. You might not mind driving an hour or 2
That's right.
to get to the
So
site.
if you got a group of guys who want to go in together, it's important that everybody's kind of on the same page. The last thing you want is someone to commit to a lease or buying a piece of ground, and then a year or 2 into it say, you know, it's too far for me to drive. I want to get out of it. Well, that changes things, right?
It can change it a lot, because the next thing, well, are we going to absorb that cost ourselves, or are we going to try to find somebody else? If we try to find somebody else, is it going to
It needs to be someone that everybody agrees to.
Everybody agrees on.
And again, we can't stress this enough. It's important to have people who have similar goals in mind, because if you don't, it will even among friends and family, it will cause stress. It will. If your goal is to let the younger bucks go so they can mature, if that's the goal of the camp or the hunting ground or whatever, it's important that everybody be on the same page. And not everybody's on the same page with that. You know, if you say what's a trophy animal, well, that definition varies from person to person. Some people, a trophy animal is just a rack buck. Well, that could be a 1.5-year-old deer, or it could be a 5.5-year-old deer. So it's important for people to discuss that and the members to be in agreement with that, because it will cause some problems. If your goal is just to fill the freezer, then you take the first legal deer you can find, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. That is perfectly fine. But everybody needs to be on that same page. That's what's important, because that's what causes problems down the road. And a lot of times you don't know this until you've spent time with individuals. You know, you may think you know someone until you spend 4 or 5 days with them. You begin to realize who they really are. And it's not a bad thing. It's just you start learning stuff over time. So some people are a better fit than others, right? So, but look, if you're a group of guys a group of families that want to get together and invest in a piece of ground, that's a great idea, because now it's a good investment. And we talked about it, Keith, earlier. We talked about there's nothing wrong with leasing property. That's perfectly fine. But if you add up how much money you spent paying taxes and leasing ground and planting food plots and take care of roads and paying the electric bill and all that, if you add all that up, you realize, if we'd done this years ago, we could have bought a piece of ground. And then eventually when we get retirement age or whatever, if we don't want it, we can sell it and get our money back. If not, make money.
Make money, right.
That's what you're going to do. You're going to make money. If you bought property back in the 80s, think about what it's worth now compared to what it was back in the 80s. And so I could see how someone who's leased ground for a long period of time, those thoughts would run across your mind. If we would have invested in this years ago, we'd have probably had a pretty good retirement plan right now.
Something Cliff and I have talked about,
Yeah,
well, if we'd just known, but back in the day, you feel like your funds were limited back then.
Right.
And you can't do it. Well, if you wait 25, 30 years down the road, you don't really anticipate land prices increasing like they have now.
That's right.
And it's sure not something you can afford later on, and you've already sunk all this time and energy into a lease property.
That's right.
But by and large, a lot of times that's the only thing that people can't afford.
And there is nothing wrong with that, because number one, buying a piece, and believe me, we're realtors. We like it when people buy ground, right? We like
Give me a call.
But at the same time, leasing is not a bad idea, because you're not stuck with a piece of ground that you may not can pay for. This year you're fine. 5 years from now, you may not be able to afford it anymore. And I get that. Leasing ground, you can at some point you can get out of it if you need to. It's not a long-term commitment. It may be a short-term commitment, but leasing offers that opportunity for you to get into it, especially if you're with a large number of people, or even just a small number of people. It makes it more affordable. You can afford, and you have access to a lot of land as well. You're just gonna maybe sacrifice. Well, it's not maybe. You will sacrifice some control of that property, especially if you're leasing it from like 16th section land or even a private landowner. And we'll get there in a minute, but since we're here, let's talk about 16th section land. Let's just talk about that, because that is a very common hunting lease that you see. And I know that's what you guys have, right?
Yeah, it's 16th section land, and you're right, you have a limited amount of control of what you can do on that property as far as your management.
Right.
Too. There are times I've had game wardens come out, do an assessment on our place, drive them through, and they said, well, you need to burn this piece over here, you need to burn it, thin it out. Well, I don't have that option.
Yeah, the 16th section, you can't do it.
There are foresters that they have got a management plan that you can go on Secretary of State's webpage and the forestry webpage, look up these sections, 16th section lands, and they'll have it stated out in there what their plan is for the property, even down to when they cut the timber.
That's right. So let's back up for a minute and let's talk about the term 16th section. So explain to the listeners what we're talking about when we talk about that.
16th section, every county is made of, it can have, depending on the size of the county, can have several 16th section. It can have as many as 5 or 6, I think, in some counties, 16th section land.
Right.
And a section is 1 mile by 1 mile.
It's 640 acres. So it's a 640 acre square.
640 acre, 1 mile
if you
by
ever
1
look at
mile square.
If you look at a property ownership map, you'll see that. You'll see them numbered 1 through, it could be, depending on the size of the county, it could be 30 or more in some cases.
And
it may move around. So,
and how you locate where that property is, also a township and a range number attached to that 16th section, and that will help locate exactly where that property is.
So what 16th section land is, what it refers to is 640 acres that's set aside for the school board, for the local school board, for that county. And so any proceeds made off of that property, such as hunting leases, not just that, it could be agricultural leases, but the property is leased.
Timber sale, timber is cut on it, the timber.
That's right.
So costs go to schools.
That's right, go ahead. Yeah. So when you lease a piece of land, 16th section land, the proceeds to that go to the local school board. That's what it's for. And so it's a good thing. You're killing 2 birds with 1 stone. You're getting a good place to hunt, but you know your money's going towards something good. It's going to support the local schools, local school board, whatever county that's in. Like you said, there may be more than 1 16th section. So again, it's labeled 1 through 30 or whatever. And when you get to number 16, that's it. It's labeled 16th section in this section, township, and range. And when you lease it, you have the option in some cases of leasing all of it or just part of it. And it's broken up into several leases potentially, right?
Ours, when I first joined out there, was in about 4 different leases.
Okay.
And then after Clark passed away and I took it over, I started seeing that they were changing up when they started bringing them all together.
Right.
Trying to get them in as big a section as they could, because with them broken up that small, they weren't getting many different bids in on the property.
Right.
But as they broke them and got them into bigger pieces, then people started coming in and bidding on them.
That's right. It became more attractive.
At one point, we had 620 acres of 640
Right.
in our piece of property. And it got to be a chore to work it. I mean, I don't care. The most people we ever had in our club was 15, I think. Right. Usually it was around 10 to 12 people. But at one point we had 50. But as with any group, I don't care if it's a church group or whatever it is, you're going to have 10% of the people doing the work of, and the other 90% just showing up.
That's just the way it is. A small percentage do most of the work. And,
but we get that done. But we did wind up losing a piece of that. We got outbid on a big chunk of land. Well, we're down to 150 acres now. And to tell you the truth, I think it was a God thing.
Yeah, it's probably a blessing in disguise.
Because it's cost us a little less money, although the prices are going up on it, seems like every year. Yeah. They started bumping lease prices up, and taxes are going up, and cost of fertilizer and seed and all is gaining on us. But it's just like everything else. It can get more expensive, but you've got to adjust and move on if you're going to carry it on.
So let's say someone listening today is interested in finding 16th section land to lease. How would they do that? What's the best way to do that?
Secretary of State of Mississippi has got an interactive web page. You go to his website and you see one that says 16th section, interactive map.
Okay. You see where it's located, and you can even see what they're getting per acre.
Right.
What they're currently getting.
It will show leases that are coming to be rebid.
Right.
And you can click on it and see how many acres it is, what price it's paying right now. It'll even give you the name of the people, of whoever's listing it.
And from what I understand, those leases come up every year. They alter. They're not just every 5 years. I mean,
No.
they are every 5 years.
They're every 5 years.
But they alternate in a sense. There's always something coming.
There's always something, yeah. I mean, they don't all come to you at the same time.
Right. So you can check on it today and see what's coming up this year. You could even see what's coming up 3 years from now.
Yeah.
So
see, we just rebid our lease this year at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things. Prices have gone up. They told us what the minimum bid was going to be this year. And
right.
we had some issues with that, but we got it worked out. And it's now we've got the lease again, and we'll have it for 5 years.
All right, that's what I'm going to ask. How long does the lease run?
It will be rebid. We pay that price every year.
Right.
And it's due by June the 1st. Actually, we got to have it paid by May 30th.
Right.
And from there, I mean, it's paid every year, but every 5 years it is rebid, just like it was this year.
And so you're not just paying just a lease, you're also responsible for the taxes as well. Is that correct?
You're responsible for the taxes.
And that can vary depending on what's on the property.
And they require you to have liability insurance on the property, which is good. I recommend that to anybody. Yeah, even if you're listening today and you want to lease a private tract of land from somebody, it's really a good Or if you buy a property, I highly recommend liability. You can get up to $2 million policy, or as high as you want to go, depending on what you want to spend.
Sure.
But they recommend all of that. I mean, we're responsible for, just like today, I just went down where I signed the lease. They've changed that this year. In the past, I've never had to go to the courthouse and take the deed, physically take it down there to get them to record it and pay $15 recording fee. I've had to pay the recording fee to them, to the school board office, and they would do it. They've changed that this year. So I just did that today, paid our recording fee.
Yeah, so listen, when you commit to this, there's a lot that goes into it. I mean, there's a lot that you have to check into, and Keith knows about it a lot more than I do. Cause
you have got to stay on top of it.
Yeah, stay on top of it, and that's and you got to stay on top of it when it's going to come up for lease, so you can tell your members, to be prepared, so they can evaluate and how that. Kind of explain to us how that works. So say you're paying $10 an acre, just roughly. When it comes up to lease, somebody could outbid you and offer to pay more, right?
Right. Somebody comes in and you put up your bid of $10 an acre,
which is what you've been paying.
Which is what we're paying now. I mean, it just went up this year. Right. Last bid period, it was $8 an acre.
Okay. So the minimum went up from 8 to 10.
Right.
So now it's 10.
Now it's 10. But if somebody comes in there and bids $12 an acre, well, then if you got your bid in at 10, then you got the right to match that.
So you have the option to come up to whatever so if they bid 18.
If they bid 18 and you feel like you can handle it, then you can say, yes, we'll pay the 18. Because when you bid it, you got to put a check in there for that amount.
Gotcha.
It goes in with the bid package.
So it shows that you have the money.
It shows that you've got the money and the check is there. And if you win it.
So what happens if you don't match the bid?
If you don't match the bid, then they win it and they take the land over. That's where we lost the chunk of land we had going down to 150 acres now. It just had some situation arise personally that I did not get my bid in on time. And the night they opened them, Stan Long called me and said, Keith, what happened? You didn't put in the bid. I said, it's not time, is it? I just had an issue with my father being in the hospital, and we were concerned about his health, and I just didn't get the bid in, and we missed it. And like I say, I think it wound up being a guy. I think it's been good. We've had to deal with fewer members, and it's the ones that are still there, the ones that were doing all the work anyway.
That's right.
It costs you less money, less time to get everything done.
That's right. All right, so there are some benefits of leasing 16 section. Number one, it's more affordable. If you lease private land, I can almost guarantee you it's going to be more than $10 to $12 an acre. Especially if it's in a good area, you're probably looking closer to $20 an acre.
Many are better. I've seen
Yeah.
some places go up to $30, $35
It
an
can
acre.
be, it can get ridiculous, but 16th section it's an affordable way to get in. The downside is you lose a lot of your control, meaning you can't go out and do prescribed burns. And you can still plant food plots. Most of the time it has to be in designated areas. I think they will allow, I think you told a story about, cut timber, they'll allow you to go in and pick another spot where you might want to plant a food plot, they'll mark it off, or you can mark it off, and then they won't plant trees over it. So
Right,
you'll have that spot.
Right, we had a area out there when we still had the whole thing that they clear cut the timber. They had, one time a tornado had come through and they went through and they cleaned it up and then they clear cut a lot of it out. And I asked them about food plots. I said, what are you gonna do with that food? And they said, well, if you want to put some new ones in, I said, go out there and mark it out, put you some ribbons out. And we won't plant trees in that part right there.
That's right.
Because that's the other thing, you don't cut down a pine tree out there.
The whole 16th section lane. You don't have that luxury of going out there and cutting timber to allow
Clear out
sunlight to
spots.
reach the ground.
Right.
And thin timber out. You just can't do that.
Now, we could in the plantation part of it, we've done this ourselves for years. As the timber gets up, you get these old trash trees, sap gum, and that are fast growing and will eat up a lot of sunlight, won't let that sunlight get to the ground.
Right.
You can go in there and cut those down.
Yeah.
They don't care about that. What they were, you don't put nails in the pine trees out there.
Right.
That can get you in big trouble. They come in there, they find a deer stand nailed to a tree or spikes in the tree or something, they're gonna start checking everything.
Yeah. You're just asking for trouble by doing
Right,
that.
but
So,
you can go in there and clear some of those trash trees out and let that sunlight get to the ground, and then you're improving that thing you can do.
That's right.
Go in there and you can run a bush hog to get sunlight to the ground.
But even if you're leasing public land, not public, I'm sorry. If you're leasing private land, you need to ask a lot of questions, and that's we'll kind of switch gears here and talk about that. So if someone's interested in leasing private land, first of all, you need to visit with that landowner. And some of these landowners are going to live out of state, so you can't necessarily go sit on the front porch and have a cup of coffee with them. But by golly, you can talk to them on the phone, or at least email them. There's a way to communicate with the folks. And so you need to ask questions like, number one, am I going to have 100% of the hunting rights on this property? Or is the landowner going to reserve the right for friends and family to come hunt? And I'll tell this story real quick. I've been out to Kansas and hunted a couple of times, and we worked with a local farmer there to go on a hunting trip. And he has property that he owns, he has property that he leases, and he has property that's owned by someone else he has permission to hunt. And those quite often are some of the better properties. But I've learned when you go out there and you hunt, you may see a blind put up or a deer stand that wasn't there the year before. And it's obvious that somebody's been hunting it. So we come back and say, well, somebody's hunting this place. It's, oh yeah, well, the landowner reserves the right for his grandchildren to come in during the holidays, or a friend of the family's hunting the place. And there's nothing you can do. You can't run them off, even though you're paying money to go hunt out there. It's just some tracts of land, that's an agreement that outfitter has with those landowners. So those are good questions to ask. That's a whole nother level if you're going on a hunting trip. You're paying money to go out somewhere out in the Midwest to hunt, and you get there and realize there's other people hunting the property too. But yet you're paying, and they're not. And there's not anything you can do about it. So the same is true when you lease a piece of ground, whether it's in Mississippi or Louisiana or wherever. Is ask that landowner, make sure that when you lease it, am I getting 100% of the hunting rights? Or am I sharing this with some unknown person that may or may not show up? And, there's nothing worse than spending money on something that you think you have 100% access to, and then somebody else shows up and hunting, and there's nothing you can do. But those are the questions you need to ask on the front end. And that landowner needs to honor that, right? If they tell you you get 100%, then you need to get what? 100%.
100%.
That's what you need. But those are questions you have to ask on the front end. Don't wait till the prime time to go and then you discover Uncle Bob is hunting the place and he killed a good deer and you would have gotten shot at that morning probably if you'd been in that hollow too. So, you know, those are all, and you're paying money to watch this happen. So
It hurts.
sometimes it can be very painful, but those are good questions to ask. Also, can you do any improvements to the property? And there are some private landowners who will allow that, such as prescribed fire. It's proven that prescribed fire greatly impacts the habitat for white-tailed deer and turkeys as well. And so it's very beneficial. But I will tell you not to run out there and strike a fire on somebody's property without permission to do so, right? You don't want to put yourself in that situation.
One, you're probably at the very least likely to lose your right to hunt on that place.
Most likely
Number two, you could be fined.
No, you're going to be held responsible for it. So those are all questions you need to have when you sit down and talk, whether that's by email or by phone or sitting on the front porch. Ask them. Find out what you can and cannot do. And look, that impacts how much you pay. If you don't have access to it 100%, don't offer to pay as much. If they want $25 an acre, say, no, I'm not going to do that. But I'll pay you this. If I know I got to share it with somebody else, whatever that amount would be, negotiate. They might negotiate with you, they might not, but it's worth a try. It's better to do that than get stuck in it for 3 years or whatever, and now you're just in it and you can't get out of it.
Yeah,
that's someone else is reaping the benefits of what all the work you're doing.
Once you start working on this contract, also get you a established time. How long is your lease going to run?
That's right.
3 years, 5 years, whatever.
And I will tell you, it's important to get it in writing. And I know some folks want to honor a handshake, and I understand that. But we are realtors. We live in a world where it needs to be in writing. It needs to be understood what you can and can't do. And to me, that just simplifies everything.
Even if you have to consult an attorney.
Even if you have to, it's worthwhile. And you know, a landowner may not want to do that. They may not want to fool with it. They just want the money, you know. So that's why you need to meet with the people. And I've always said you can tell a lot about a person within the first 10 or 15 minutes you will. If your gut instinct is this is not going to work out, then it's probably better to just let it go, right? And try to find something else. Which leads me to the next topic is how do I find these places? I mean, how do you find a private piece of land to hunt? Well, it's an interesting question because you can contact people that you know. Just start with folks that you know. Hey, do you know of someone who would consider leasing their property?
If you know somebody that's big into hunting,
yep,
talk to them. I mean, they can usually point you towards somebody. Your state game and fish commission. I mean, every county has got their own agents that are out there in the field, and you can talk to them. They hear
communicate
from a lot of landowners that know that might be willing to lease their property to you.
And then sometimes foresters are good resources because sometimes they'll manage property to out-of-state landowners. So they're kind of overseeing their timber, they're overseeing their property, they're in communication with those people on a regular basis, to the owners on a regular basis. And so, you know, the owner may not realize that they can make some income by leasing the property. You know, they're treating their property as a timber investment, which it is, and it's providing a return down the road. But meanwhile, they can make money by leasing their hunting rights out to people. And so if it's a right combination between landowner and the person or the group who's leasing the property, it can be very beneficial. It helps everyone involved. The landowner makes money, and the people leasing get to enjoy the hunting and get to enjoy everything that comes with that. And everybody's happy. Everybody's happy with each other.
Yeah,
that's a good thing.
And that's where the landowner, if he can get that money, then he's got money to pay taxes on the property, plus maybe some extra. It depends on beneficial the property is as far as deer hunting.
Right.
Or any kind of hunting.
And we've even seen situations where someone would lease the hunting rights out to a group for deer hunting, and then lease the same property out to another group for turkey hunting in the springtime. So in essence, you've got two incomes coming in at different parts of the year. So that group that leases it for deer hunting would not have access to it during turkey season, and vice versa. Turkey season hunters would not have access to it during the hunting season, during the deer season. Well, that allows both groups to manipulate the property, maybe plant some food plots. Everybody benefits from that, right? So it's important to, number one, you got to find a piece of ground. It goes back to what we talked about earlier. What's suitable for Keith may not be suitable for me. Keith may not mind driving 2 hours for a place to hunt.
You would.
Yeah, I would too. But, for me, 30 minutes, 20 minutes, that's ideal. You think about it. We talked about this earlier. It's ideal for like an afternoon hunt. I could leave work a little early if I need to, go hunt, and still after, say it gets dark at 5:30, I can be home by 6:15. The wife's happy, not mad at me because I'm stuck out in the woods somewhere and won't get home to dark 30. How many times your wife asks you, what time are you going to be home? Dark 30. What time is that? I'll be home when I get home.
or you come in, they say, well, it's been dark. It's been dark an hour.
Well, it took me 20 minutes to walk back to the truck. That does happen, right? So,
yeah.
Look, you got to decide as a group, especially if you're getting together with a group of other guys to lease a property. Y'all got to be on the same page. Do you want something that's fairly close, or do you mind driving an hour or more? Because that's going to impact whether or not you're going to enjoy the property, whether or not your family's going to enjoy the property. You're going to commit to a lease that's an hour away, and you're going to love it, but your wife's going to hate it because you're getting home 2 hours after dark, at the very least, when it's during the holidays and they want you to go to grandma's house for Thanksgiving dinner, or we got to do Christmas at my other family. That can get complicated. Now all of a sudden hunting season is not quite as fun as you hoped it would be back in July.
Right.
It's real life happens. So you got to think about all that and think about, and the same is true when you buy a piece of ground to hunt. It's no different buying it versus leasing it. How far away from your house or your camp or whatever. What's the best fit for you? And if you're putting together a hunting camp, a hunting lease where you got multiple people involved, it's important for you to ask those other members, what do they want? And there are like a lot of people, they hadn't really given much thought to it until it happens. And now all of a sudden, they're in a 3-year lease, and a year into it, they're like, I got to get out, man. My wife's mad at me because I'm never at home. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Now you're stuck with either making up the difference between the rest of them, or you got to get some other knucklehead that you may not want in there. You know what I mean? So it can get complicated. So it's important to think about all this before you ever start and get everybody else to think about it too. It sounds easy, doesn't it?
It sounds easy, but historically, from what I've dealt with, big part of my life here, it's never that easy.
That's right.
you're always going to have issues come up. Is it going to be worth it for you to deal with those issues? Certainly. If you love your sport, we do a lot.
Yeah.
To do the things that we enjoy, be it turkey hunting, be it deer, be it just going out riding your Polaris or your side-by-side out there over the country. I've gotten to the point where I enjoy the getting ready for the
I did the same thing, anticipating the hunt, anticipating the upcoming season and stuff like that. It's just as much fun as the actual hunting is. In some cases, it's more fun. And so that's a good thing, right? That's just something you can enjoy.
I've been to the point I've had crosshairs on the neck out there and say, if I pull this trigger, I'm gonna have to clean this thing. Nobody here to help me.
We've all done that. Yeah, we run into that all the time. Like on our family farm, we set a goal how many does we want to kill, but it happens to me every year. Like I've got something planned. You know how it is. It's around the holidays, and you got somewhere to be at 6:30, and right at dark, doe and a couple fawns come in or something, you're like, okay, it's my opportunity to take this doe out. Then you're like, okay, if I shoot this thing, that means it have to take me 30 minutes to get it back to the truck. Now we got to get it back and clean it. Wife's gonna be mad at me.
You eating up a lot of daylight, a lot of time there.
That happens all the time. So I don't know, it's just something you got to consider, because your goal when you go hunting, your goal is to actually harvest something, right? I mean, that's why you're going. You're going to have a good time too, but we tend to forget sometimes that your whole goal is to be successful, right? I remember years ago, Keith, I tell this story. I went on a bear hunt. I went to Canada, and we got ready to go, and we drove like an idiot. We drove, well, I'm not saying idiot, because the other guys maybe listening who went with me, and they probably enjoyed the trip, but we drove. It took 2 days to drive from South Mississippi to Manitoba, Canada. 2 days.
I know one of them that was driving.
Yeah, you know.
I called him an idiot.
Well, I'm telling you, man, that was a long way to go. And we drove up there, and we finally got there. It didn't seem like we were ever going to get there. We finally did. And so we got there in the late afternoon, kind of looked around that evening, got into bed, got a good night's sleep. When bear hunting, you don't actually go hunt till the afternoon. So it was about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We got everything packed up, and the guide, we got everything in the truck and everything. And he said, if y'all don't mind, guys, I'd like for us to say a word of prayer. And that kind of caught us all off guard. We weren't expecting that, you know. So we bowed our head, and he said, I thank you for each one of these men. I thank you for their families, and hope everybody's doing well back home. Thank you that they arrived here safely. He said, but now, Lord, help us to kill a bear. Amen. That was his prayer. And that was the first time I'd ever have someone pray that we'd be successful. And I began to realize, you know, we just drove 2 days to get here. And it was an adventure to get here. But we're here. And our whole goal coming here was to kill a bear. Now, I never had anybody pray for that, ask for that specifically. And I remember thinking, you know, we need to do that as hunters, and then just in life, you know, pray for that. I'm a God-fearing man. Pray for things. It's okay to say, help me to be successful.
I always figured God had bigger things to worry about than me killing a bear or a deer.
But, you know, it's important. I mean, think about it. We think about this from a real estate investment. How many people spend money on recreational things? You know, think about it, Keith. We sell property, and we own it. I own land, bought it myself to go hunt on. Got a 4-wheel drive truck. I don't have a side-by-side now. I'm going to get me one, I hope one day. I sold mine back in COVID, but I'm going to try to get another one at some point. You buy this nice side-by-side. I can't tell you how much money I spent on gear, guns, clothing, boots. Think about it. All this stuff we've accumulated over the years. Hunting license, gas, getting here, yonder, and there. Food. Think of how much food you eat on a hunting trip compared to what you eat.
You're going to eat food anyway.
Yeah, but I eat more when I go hunt. I always do. And you forget that your goal is to be successful. And so my point is, that's what it's all about. It's about enjoying the journey. Yes, it is. But it's also about being successful and to be intentional about that. And so when we lease a piece of ground, when we hunt, when we buy a piece of ground, whatever, we have to understand that our whole goal of going out there is to harvest an animal and then to use that animal and to enjoy it, the whole process. And guess what? That takes time and it takes effort. And it doesn't really take a lot of money, really. I mean, how much does it cost for you to drag a deer out and skin it, process it, and enjoy it? It's just your time and effort is what it is. But we have to be intentional about that. We have to be ready for success. And I don't know, it just always struck with me about being prayerful for success, because that's why we're going. Let's go enjoy it, man. Let's do it. And let's plan for it. Plan for it. Instead of getting dark, you know, it's right at dark and this doe walks out and you're like, I'm going to pass. Okay, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I've done that 100 times. If you do that too much, then you have to ask yourself, what am I doing this for? Why am I really out here doing this? see what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Well, I've never considered myself a great hunter. I think I know a lot about hunting,
yeah,
but I probably consider myself a mediocre hunter.
I feel the same way.
I've killed some good deer. I've enjoyed my hunting. Love it. But the thought process of getting out there and getting ready for the hunt and sitting on a stand and God's beautiful outdoors and
That's right.
just enjoying it. Watching those sunrises. How many sunrises have we enjoyed? And sunsets. Sitting there in the evening watching it. It's just can't beat God's great outdoors.
All right, another question you need to ask a landowner before you commit to a lease is who's going to maintain the roads? Who's going to maintain the gates? Let's say you lease a property and there is no gate at the entrance. It's just a raw piece of land. Well, are they, maybe you offer to put up a gate, knock off a little bit of what the cost of the lease for that year, all those things can be negotiated where you make the property more secure, not only for you, the person who's leasing the property, but for the landowner too. So it benefits the landowner as well. Maintain the roads. Well, I'll be glad to maintain the road. I'll bring my tractor in with a box blade and smooth it up. Now let's knock off a little bit of what the lease costs in the first part of the year, or something like that. Negotiate. Maybe a landowner wants to do it, maybe they don't. Maybe that's the difference when you get the lease, maybe it's not. Maybe you can offer that free of charge if you agree to lease it to them. You see what I mean? Or if they release it to you, I mean. And so there's different ways to negotiate that transaction. But it's important questions to ask. Who's going to do that? Who's going to secure the place? Who's going to put a gate up or replace a gate? Who's going to take care of the roads? And that kind of thing.
And if you're dealing with a local landowner, somebody that you're liable to run into in town, or you may be going by his house, he may live close to the property where you're hunting at. Don't hesitate to take that man some deer meat.
That's right.
If he likes deer, it will go a long way in your benefit to take that man. Maybe it's a hind quarter. You don't have to take him one off every deer. I had first place I had in Lawrence County that we hunted. The man told me, he said it won't cost you nothing. He said, but just I want a hind quarter and the liver.
That's right.
Off of every deer. I said, the liver? I said, are you serious? He said, yes sir, I love them. I said, well, I will bring you a hind quarter and a liver off every deer we get. And I did.
And on the same token, because I've experienced this myself, sometimes the landowner may not be a gentleman. It may be a lady, someone whose husband's passed away, and she and the children have inherited the property, and she's over 60. She still lives on the property. So instead of taking her, the liver or the hind quarter, maybe give her a gift certificate to a nice restaurant or something.
Oh, I thought maybe you were gonna say take her the hide and tell her to make her some buckskins.
You could do that too, but it goes back to that old saying: know who your audience is. I mean, if it's a widow,
right?
Take her something appropriate for her so that she would enjoy. She's not going to enjoy the hide per se.
Oh yeah, and this same gentleman, that I carried the liver to. If I came out, he'd be working on his tractor or whatever. I'd stop and help him.
That's right.
He might be changing oil in it or whatever, but I'd jump right in there and help him. If one day I went in drinking some of that oil that he called coffee with him one morning, I saw a stack of some Post-it signs, and I said, "What are these, Mr. Bell?" He said, "I got to get around here and put these up." I said, "You want me to put them up for you?" He said, "Would you do that?" I said, "Yes, sir, I will."
Yep.
I said, "I know where your boundaries are. I'll put them up for you."
Yep, makes a difference, and it goes back to our previous episode. We talked about building relationships. Build a relationship today that you may get to enjoy a hunting lease 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road. And I'm always a big proponent. Always be on the lookout for another place to go hunt. whether that's a lease or whether that's just getting access through private landowners. But for today's sake, if you want to get together with a group of guys and lease a piece of ground, that's a great opportunity, whether it's 16th section or private. Either one is great. And always keep in mind you have access to public land as well.
Right,
So,
they've got thousands and thousands of acres of public land out there.
That's right.
And you're talking about other ways to find private land, Google. You know,
Google.
you got to go on is find hunting land for lease.
Yeah.
And they'll pull up numerous places. The main one that jumps out at me is I've dealt with them in the past is American Hunting Lease Association. That'll probably be one of the first ones that will pop up when you start looking.
Yeah.
And you put in your area you're looking for some place to hunt, and they'll have it, and they can put you in contact, or they'll contact landowners for you, however you want to work that.
Another great way to find property is to run an ad. You see them all the time in the Mississippi Market Bulletin. You may see it in your local newspaper, where someone will post an ad saying, "I'm interested in leasing property in a Tri-County area. You know, if you're interested in leasing your property, here's my cell phone number. Call me. I'd be glad to talk." So you're just broadcasting. You're throwing a big net, and you're saying, "Look, I'm interested in leasing property. If you're interested in leasing it, give me a call and we'll talk." And then you figure out where you want to go and if it's a good fit for you or not. But another great way is social media. You can do the same thing on social media. And look, you open yourself up to all types of possibilities by doing that. But hey, look, it's okay to ask, "Hey, look, I'm in the market to lease a piece of ground in this state, in this area, in this county, or whatever. It's close to home, whatever fits your needs. Or maybe you don't mind driving 3 hours, 2 hours. Well, then search there. But decide where you want to be, and then find something there. And I'd be willing to bet you can find it. It's going to take some effort and some work, and it may take some time. And you may not find it for this season, but you might find it for the next or even 2 seasons from now. So stick with it, be diligent. It'll come. It'll come. All right. Anything else before we go?
I think we got to talk that one to pieces.
I think we did too. All right. Well, here it is, July. And look, July 4th's over. It's time to switch gears. Let's go.
We got gator season coming
Gator
up.
season's coming up in August.
Of course, none of us got a draw, do we?
Well, no. Well, I mean, Chris got one.
Oh, okay, that's right. I forgot about Chris.
Yeah, Chris got one. So
Chris not going to invite me to go.
He might go. You just need to invite you. You need to insert yourself
Insert myself.
in the conversation, so that when it comes time to go, he's like, "Oh yeah, let me call Keith and see if he wants to go." You never know. That's my plan anyway. That's what I'm gonna do. So Chris, if you're listening, man, don't forget about us.
We're here.
There you
We will be there for you.
That's right. Bring that 12-footer in the boat. You can sit back and relax. We'll get in the boat.
Might be a 13-footer.
There you go. But either way, we'll do it. All right. Thank y'all. Hope everybody has a good week, and we'll see you next week. Until then, stay addicted
To the outdoors. We got long